All right. Hello, everybody out there, and welcome to this week's HackSurfer Hangout. We're starting our new summer schedule this kind of summer, I guess. So we'll be doing these every Thursday instead of every Friday over the course of the summer. Today, I'm kind of excited. We got a pretty cool guest, Charles Tendell. He's an ethical hacker and the founder of Azorian Cyber Security. How are you doing today, Charles?
I'm doing all right, Jeff. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So yeah, the topic of this are basically just going to be talking about sort of the insider threat in cybercrime. It's a whole lot of different, I guess, angles to that. If anyone has any questions and you're out there watching, feel free to put them in the Google Q&A app or tweet them. Got my Twitter handle right there on the screen, and we'll try to get to those by the end of the half hour here.
Cool.
So I guess just to kind of kick it off, I guess my perception, I guess you can tell me if I'm wrong, but my perception about insider threats is that I guess the outside threat is something, I guess, that happens more often in most businesses. They get more attacks from the outside, but when it comes to insider threats, maybe it can be more dangerous, or the attacks can cause more damage. That's sort of my perception. Am I accurate in that at all?
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it this way. You know, if you've got a resource or an individual that is inside your network and they're authorized to do whatever it is they're authorized to do, right? Then yeah, the threat of that breach is I don't have to do the work to get past your security mechanisms. You've basically given me access. I mean, look at the Target breach. You know, technically it wasn't an outsider threat. They hacked the HVAC company that worked with Target, and they used their insider information or their inside connection to be able to piggyback into, Target's main payment system. And we see what happened there. So it's insider threats are much harder to combat than just about anything. Look at the Edward Snowdens of the world. It becomes that thing of who do I trust versus who can't I trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting you bring up Edward Snowden. I mean, I've seen a few different studies out there just kind of talking about the awareness of insider threat. I think one just came out in May. I think it was 58% of business executives are, I guess, more concerned or more aware of the insider threat. Just kind of curious if that's something that you kind of see as well as sort of the increased awareness kind of around the topic.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's first be clear about my position with Edward Snowden. I think the man's a patriot, and I think what he did just kind of solidifies that when you treat your employees like crap, you're going to result in this type of outburst. And in this particular case, it has nothing to do with his work environment. He tried to do the right thing. He was trying to bring up information, and they kept slapping him down and doing evil things. So he took it upon himself. But I am seeing, from a professional sense, a lot of organizations are now more worried about their employees being able to spill data, and the sad part about that is they're becoming more paranoid. So now that once extremely well trusted employee is finding themselves, not trusted anymore, and it begins to hurt relationships. They're turning good employees into disgruntled employees by suddenly being paranoid about insider threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's we do these interviews every week, and I guess it was probably a couple months ago I was talking to someone, and their kind of philosophy was basically you have to constantly monitor employees, basically have a camera over your shoulder at all times. But then obviously, like you said, that can kind of lead to disgruntled employees. So I guess, where do you kind of draw the line, and how do you go about enforcing security if you're going to create that environment?
All right. What I like to tell my clients, and what we like to tell everybody, is trust but verify. I don't need to monitor you doing everything that you can do. You just need to understand that I can monitor everything that you're doing at any given time. And do random spot checks, but don't pull someone aside and suddenly give them the third degree, because that's how you lose loyalty with your employees, and nobody wants to deal with it. No one wants to deal with that at all. Everybody's of the opinion, hey, you're invading my space, you're invading my privacy. It's no longer a safe work environment, or the last thing you want is to create the problem that you're so worried about. So I don't think the answer is to lock down and to Gestapoize your employees, I guess. I think the answer is to develop a working policy with your employees, have a conversation with them, have some education, based on this is what we're afraid of. We want to start implementing this type of security, and, train them that security is for all of us. It's not just, to protect this company. If the company gets breached or something bad happens to this company, you all potentially lose your jobs. You all potentially get hurt just as badly as we do. So, help us help you stay employed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before we kind of get going too much farther, I guess a lot of people might not be too familiar with you or your company. Can you kind of maybe just give us a little quick background on that, and if you're kind of related to the insider threat space at all?
Oh, sure. My name is Charles Tendell, like you said. I am a certified ethical hacker and the founder of Azorian Cyber Security. Azorian Cyber Security is a dynamic threat intelligence company. We do penetration testing, we do security evaluations, vulnerability assessments, and we're basically the hackers that come in and hack you the way a regular hacker would, except we're authorized to do it, and we're going to give you a report on what we did. We specialize in web applications, mobile applications, and again, threat intelligence. We've got agents all over the world that feed us all information that we turn into actionable reports for our clients. Me personally, I've been in the industry probably going on 20 years now. And I like to blame my father for it because he brought home our first computer, said don't touch it. Had he said go for it, it probably wouldn't have bothered the thing. I discovered how to connect it to the internet, and I got really good. And basically, if you want to learn the whole first portion of my life, just read the Hacker Manifesto. You'll get it. And then joined the Army fresh out of school. Did some computer forensics and investigation with military police and things like that. After that, I worked for a couple of three-letter government agencies and a couple of the Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheons of the world, and then started my own private practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess I'm interested when you do those kind of pen testing things for companies, from the insider threat angle, is that something that maybe the companies, I guess I'm wondering if that's something that they're looking for ahead of time, or is that something that kind of maybe catches them off guard sort of afterwards? You say, hey, you got all these kind of vulnerabilities.
Well, it's a mixture of both. It goes to the aspect of what they're afraid of. A lot of business owners nowadays are openly saying we're afraid of employees and trusted partners walking out with our data. In some cases. In other cases, they openly trust everyone, and when we do bring the idea of insider threat to them, they're in kind of that shock and that denial aspect where they're like, no, my employees would never do anything like that. They love me. Meanwhile, employee X is walking out on a daily basis, whether they're doing it on purpose or just doing it as efficient, and they think they're okay with it. They're walking out with client lists and all these great things that they're taking home to work on, and all it takes is that employee to lose it. So they're not looking at it. Some of them are looking at it as insider threat is a big deal. Others are looking at it as I really don't have to worry about that. And yeah, they do have that shock moment when they realize the insider threat isn't a intentional malicious activity. It could just be an accident. I could just accidentally lose my smartphone that has everything on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess kind of on our site we sort of break everything down. Cybercrime by industry. And looking at our data, the one industry that I guess really stands out when it comes to insider threat is the healthcare field. I think we just did a study or report not too long ago, and I think it was something like 70% of the cyber crimes are sort of related to employees, whether that's them losing a device or things like that. So I guess I'm wondering your thoughts, kind of like industry-wise. Is there any area or industry that's I guess more susceptible to the insider threat, or is it just something kind of that applies to everybody?
Well, it does really kind of apply to everyone. Where I see it more on the insider threat angle are the ones who do, software development companies and design companies and people with very large or with still developing sales organizations. The sales organization, those sales guys, these are my leads. I work these all together. Those where I see those holes the most. What I don't see it more in are the kind of the service companies, the ones that are all inbound, where it really doesn't matter if you take this client or not. They're not going to follow you because you don't have the techniques to do it. But salespeople will bounce from one company to another company. I see it more in the mobile space now than I did years ago. But that's just because of the advert of all the high-speed computers in our pockets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you bring up the mobile device, because one of the questions that we have out there from Monica, she wants to know, what are your top tips for keeping business portable devices secure in the age of BYOD?
Policy. Just training and development. Good question. BYOD is bring your own device, but a lot of organizations are doing that to save cost and energy. but they're not developing the policies and procedures to be able to, one, track, deactivate, wipe, or monitor these devices. They don't have the infrastructure to do it. They're like, oh, it's hooked up to Exchange. Exchange has something small. I can remote wipe the device if necessary. But it only works in this example, or this example. So having the infrastructure in place to be able to appropriately support that is one. Making sure that your help desk is understanding that you've got people with all these different devices. Be ready to support that. But security mechanism-wise, training is going to be probably your key thing when dealing with BYOD. Make sure you beat them over the head with, this is what needs to happen in the event you lose or your phone gets stolen or anything like that. If you're transferring data, use the electronic infrastructure that you've got to limit things on their devices. They can't pull down specific files. They can't attachments can you can't download the full attachment and things like that. And these are all just settings you can set up in most of your mobile device management systems.
Mm-hmm. All right, one other question we got out there from Eric. He wants to know, in your experience, what is the ratio like between malicious and negligent employee activity?
Malicious is actually much lower than what most people think. The negligent one is probably going to be much higher than anything else. If I had to put a percentage on it, I say probably less than 10% are malicious, and the majority of them, the rest of them will be negligence. Joe didn't know, that flash disk that he had that had all of the company intellectual property on it was left in his car or fell out of his pocket in the parking lot. Versus Joe intentionally went and stole all this information and ran off to a competing company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess kind of. That's sort of how I classify it. You got your malicious and then you got kind of your negligence. Is there any sort of different, I guess, approaches, that a business should take? I mean, is there like a one-size-kind-of-fits-all, like, that can apply to all insider threats, or do you kind of have to approach those two different categories differently in terms of cybersecurity?
Well, in terms of cybersecurity, a breach is a breach is a breach. If it happened accidentally, or if it happened, on purpose, if it happened as a result of a disgruntled employee or some cyber espionage, because your competitor, is trying to hack you, or if it just happened because, again, Johnny just dropped a flash disk. You need to treat those as breaches. You need to go through the same incident response process. You need to notify the appropriate people. And you need to have appropriate safeguards there ahead of time to be able to protect against that. The right cyber liability insurance, the right coverage for you, the right policies and procedures in place so that your clients or the people that might be impacted don't just go sue crazy and start throwing lawsuits at you left and right because you didn't have anything to reasonably protect their data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Richard kind of has a question sort of following up on, kind of what we talked about earlier, kind of where do you draw the line with your employees? He wants to know, how do you train and inform management about insider threats and how to mitigate these threats without ostracizing your employees?
Well, again, you have to security is a full cycle thing. It's not you flip on a switch. It shouldn't be security is IT is these guys over here, security are these guys over here. As a business owner, you need to get your employees involved in your security program. They need to understand that a security incident affects, again, everyone in the organization, that security is everyone's responsibility. So by putting it in a sense where they're teaming up, it's not just your word and they're doing it because you say so. This is a policy, this is how we're going to develop it. And I've seen very good results with putting together business unit leaders inside of an organization and saying, this is our objective. This is what level of security we want to get to. We'd like your input and how to implement all of this without ostracizing everyone. So work with your culture instead of just Gestapo come in, I'm implementing this. That's where you're going to do. How can we most effectively implement this? Is a conversation you want to have inside your organization. This is what we're attempting to prevent. This is how it all works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, as you're sort of dealing with different organizations and sort of doing pen testing on them and things like that, are there any, I guess, sort of themes or kind of common mistakes you see that businesses are making that they can maybe draw on?
Well, one of my favorite mistakes that these guys make are social media. Like, we all love it. Like, social media we're all being brought closer together. Everybody's on Facebook. And if you're not on Facebook, something's wrong with you. I'm not on Facebook, so you won't find me there. But every company is like, oh, it's a great marketing tool and we can use it for this, this, and this. But they fail to realize that in order for that Facebook to work, it's got to have interactions. So the next thing they do is they involve all of their employees, and all of their employees don't have an understanding as to what the purpose of this page is, what types of information need to be put up there, what types of connections are put up there. So you've got employees who are accidentally posting, oh yeah, corporate luncheon is going to be here, we're all doing this, and they're posting pictures of things like badges and inadvertent access codes and stuff like that, and there's no social media, use case, saying do not do X, Y, or Z if you're going to interact with the company. Again, it comes down to training, but everybody's like market, figure out our bottom line. The second one, in the same sense, is they're all about spending money to buy an appliance or to buy a service, that's going to make them air quote secure, and they think security is kind of a fire and forget thing. I put this up here, it's my firewall, it's been here, it was working, somebody else looks at it occasionally, I'm good. You're completely wrong, because your firewall nowadays does next to nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read a interesting study just earlier today. I'm going to see if I can quick bring it up, share this so everyone can see it. But yeah, it was an interesting study from Ponemon and Raytheon that came out, just kind of about the insider threat. And I think you should be able to see this, but one of the there was kind of two charts that I thought kind of summed it up. Figure 9 here, it just talks about I guess sort of the difficulty of even figuring out if there is an insider threat. There's not enough information, there's too many false positives, things like that. And then if I can scroll up a little bit to figure 7, this one basically kind of talks about the problems with enforcing privileged user access. Just basically like they can't keep pace with the number of requests. There's a lack of a consistent method, burdensome, too expensive, difficult. So I just kind of thought those two charts together kind of painted the picture of, one, it's hard to even find out if there is an insider threat, and then even if you do kind of have a policy in place, there's still a lot of these sort of problems with kind of figuring out how to enforce the user access. Just kind of curious your thoughts on those charts in that study, and if there's anything you kind of take away from that.
Well, executives love pretty numbers and pie charts and things like that, and it does kind of drive the point home of, it's a fine balance. You want to be protected against insider threat, but you don't know what that looks like as a business owner. There's no way of predicting whether tomorrow Jeff's going to lose it and going to be like, I want to go, and I'm the IT guy, I've got positive control over everything. But you can't limit said IT guy until that incident kind of happens. Because if I start limiting your access, you as the IT guy can no longer do your job, which makes you ineffective, which makes the company suffer, and so on and so forth. A lot of these things that you can do, there are some tools out there that you can implement on a network security monitoring tool. Like there's a free one out there called Security Onion. Very good, easy to deploy, especially if you're in a bind and you just want to see what kind of stuff's moving around on your network. There's other NSMs out there. There's other monitoring tools. There's DNS tools where you can just see who's doing what. There are DLPs where you can see what kind of data is ingressing and egressing from your network or stored where. But without getting super paranoid and now adding this additional layer and all these additional moving parts to to begin to monitor this, all of that level of data, you're kind of left out there flapping. And most people don't understand that normal insider threat traffic looks like normal traffic on your network. Like, it's normal for the IT guy to be doing DNS updates and email trolling and all those other stuff. That's normal. So if I'm an IT guy and I'm the disgruntled one and I'm doing what appears to be normal, how do you catch that? There's really no way to do it until kind of the stuff hits the fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one aspect I wanted to kind of touch on too is you kind of brought up, sort of like the vendors or kind of third parties that are coming in. I think, at least for me and most people, I think when you think insider, you think kind of like your own employees, but kind of like you brought up with Target or Edward Snowden is kind of the classic example. Mm-hmm. If you're a business and you're kind of dealing with all these third parties, is there anything, I guess, different, or a good way to kind of deal with them and kind of manage that risk, or is it a similar kind of method with your own employees?
Well, it's gonna be the same. I mean, you're a risk is a risk, whether it's your employer or whether it's third party. The only thing you can really do with a third party is to put together what's called an SLA, or a service level agreement, that says you're going to adhere to these levels, or get the ability to be able to audit them. I mean, look at Target. Again, they're trusted third party because they were trusted. They only had, they were doing a job that seemed completely irrelevant, that nobody really mattered. They got hacked using a simple phishing tool. Using a simple phishing attack, they got hacked, which was used as a pivot point to hack Target. And when that happened, Target lost it. Now they were looking for people to blame, so on and so forth. But what they could have done to protect themselves there was, in order for you to work with us, you have to go through this security audit. In order for us to be able to comfortable working with you, you have to be able to adhere to the following standards. We need to be able to verify that you're doing this kind of stuff. So, it's all about, developing those friendships. You meet them on the street. Hey, you're cool. Like I'm meeting you, Jeff. You're cool, dude. We're hanging out. We're having a good time. But would our security match when it came to, would you hand me the keys to the HackSurfer website? One guy I listened to today was like, what, the trust level is like this. Would you let me watch your kids? We just met. How comfortable are you with that? And it's all about the level of risk you're willing to assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of, going off on, the risk that you're talking about, I think that's, one area that a lot of companies always come up, is where to put their resources. They have a limited budget. So I imagine a lot of them are kind of putting their resources more towards, the sort of the outside threat, the sort of outside hackers. Just wonder if you sort of have any practical advice on how they can sort of, I guess, weigh the pros and cons and kind of weigh the risk and decide kind of where they should be allocating their resources.
Well, I don't want to detract from you need to be defending yourself from external threats. Like, you really need to keep doing that. But you need to change your mindset as to what you're defending against. As the electronic battlefield advances, those lines get blurred. It's no longer hackers. Yes, I'm going to throw a scan at your infrastructure to see if there are any easy holes for me to get in. You've got servers in your DMZ. You've got websites I'm going to try and hack. You've got potential vulnerabilities or SQL injection or cross-site scripting, you name it, in your website, right? I know you're going to be looking for those types of attack structures. If you're any size company, I know you're going to be looking for that. So I'm going to okie doke you, and I'm going to go the ways you don't think I'm going to come in. And at that point, I'm going to be crafting my attack to look as if it's more insider. So, 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. Both of the threat vectors are, very large and very there. So if I were small company X, I would set up my standard security mechanisms, my firewalls, my intrusion detection, maybe go cloud provider, maybe even get some managed services. But internally, there just aren't enough tools to be able to identify an insider threat or an advanced persistent threat in this particular case.
Mm-hmm. And then one other question that just came in from Eric. He says, silly question, but is penetration testing as fun and awesome as it sounds?
Yeah, it has its good days and its bad days. I mean, I get paid to break into people's places. I think that's pretty cool. I get paid to like, everybody's thought about this. I'm sure you've done it, even yourself. You look at a facility, or you see something like at a concert or something, right? And you're thinking, I bet I could get backstage. I get paid to do that. Like, I get paid to figure out how to get into places that I'm not supposed to. Like, the conference I was at today was at a data center. And, as I'm walking in, I came up with I suddenly realized, I could get complete access to this entire facility if I just show up for a conference or for an event. They don't check ID. They don't ask questions. You don't have to sign in. You don't have to do anything. I could just walk in and be like, yes, I'm here with the event. I get paid to think like that. So it's fun, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the report writing portion kind of sucks, but,
Right. I guess, following up on that, I'm just curious if, I guess one of the criticisms I've sort of heard in the past is, not enough businesses are sort of doing penetration testing and kind of getting sort of a third-party view of their vulnerabilities. Is that something that you see kind of changing and improving, or is it still kind of something that not most companies do?
It's slowly but surely improving. I mean, it's still a lot of companies feel they can't afford it, right? They feel like it's going to cost me $10 million to get this expert to come look at my stuff. And I always try to inform people when I speak that I'm not as expensive as you think I am. But I guarantee you I'm a lot cheaper than what happens if you get a breach and you get a fine and you lose reputation and you get, God forbid, you're a medical place and, HIPAA basically shuts you down. I'm a lot cheaper in retrospect to that, but it's also they're saying, they don't budget it. They put, security in the IT budget, and IT spends it on, new computers and RAM upgrades and, cameras and smartphones, And they're like, oh, we've only got, $2,000 now for our security budget. What are we going to do? Here, buy this appliance and have someone else manage it. I think it's more they're worried that we're going to cost too much, and that's why a lot of small businesses in general aren't doing it. And they're still of the mindset that they're not a target. We're too small. They're not coming after me. Why do they want me? I have no intellectual property. Well, I don't want you or your intellectual property. I want the people you're connected to. I want, you're a small business, but you provide, heating and air conditioning services to Target, where there's potentially millions of dollars to be made there. So small businesses are just, one, they don't feel they're a target, and two, they don't feel they can afford it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, final question then I have for you. I guess not really related to insider threats, but every month we kind of have sort of a question of the month kind of thing at HackSurfer. And this month, the theme's kind of encryption, so just kind of want to get your thoughts in general on that. I guess this past year it's sort of been one of the bigger topics. Edward Snowden keeps saying encryption's the answer to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. With the eBay breach, all the personally identifiable information came out, and people were saying, well, we should be encrypting personally identifiable information. So I'm just kind of wondering your thoughts just in general and on encryption, and if you have anything kind of to say in general on that topic.
Well, I'll put it to you like this. Every personal device that I have, my business devices, my mobile devices, tablets, you name it, all of them are encrypted. Now, my trust level wavers, depending on the device and who's actually generating the encryption mechanism. But I use whole disk encryption on my laptop. I use, device encryption on my phones. All simply put because, it's one more layer that a bad guy has to get through. It's better to have than not to. And I've done more than one demonstration with, picking up a random computer from random place and, doing a hard drive analysis and carving back really sensitive data that you really probably didn't want anybody else to have. So encryption, while not the end-all be-all, is a great thing to have, and it is a great additional level of protection. Encrypted website transactions, having a secure VPN for encryption, having your devices encrypted. It's all there, and most of the tools are built in, and they're really, really simple to use. So why not use it? I think it's gonna. I would rather try and hack the guy's laptop that I know is unencrypted than the guy's laptop who is encrypted. If I can get physical access to your box and you've got a Windows password on it, yay for you. Pulling your hard drive and I don't need your password. But if your hard drive is encrypted, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just one quick follow-up then. I guess just kind of looking at a lot of the businesses out there, is that something in terms of encryption that you see might eventually happen where we kind of get to sort of encrypting more than just the credit card numbers or things like that? Or is that something that's going to be a long ways down the road?
Oh, say that one more time?
Just like in terms of encrypting, like all the information, like personal identifiable information, mm-hmm. things like that, kind of like with the eBay breach people were talking about. Is that something that you see potentially happening sometime in the near future, or is that something that just like it's going to be way down the road before?
Well, it's already happening in most places. For example, the Target breach stuff, or the eBay data, that was raw data that was exported from an encrypted database. So it was encrypted at one point. It was just a decryption mechanism was used to get it into clear text because somebody wanted it in clear text. It's more about data handling than it is about just full-on encryption. I can have encryption all day, but if I have the ability to export it to clear text, the encryption mechanism is flawed now. So it's encryption with your data at rest. With data in transit, you want to try and make sure it's encrypted so no one can man in the middle of it or pick it up and play with it or manipulate it. And you want to make sure that you've got the forethought and the wherewithal to not store. You remember back in the day when websites had passwords in them. They used to be clear text in the HTML because nobody knew how else to do it, and they figured, oh, it's secure because it's in code. Nobody knows it's there. And you see them now where a lot of people are doing base 64 encryption, and they're like, it's better than nothing, So it's kind of a process.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks for stopping by and answering our questions, Charles.
Oh, I hit the button. My